Mic check, 1 2 1 2 1 2. So I sing you to sleep after the loving. Come on, sing along, David. Little Engelbert Humperdinck there for you. All right, everybody. Bob Chick along with David Bay and the return of Peter McGuff. Peter, welcome back to the mix, man. It's good to have you back at the Arnold.
Thank you. It's great to be back here, and I'm feeling great.
You're looking good.
Thank you. Should we get a room now and cut out the middle?
Actually, we do have a room here already, but all right. Well, David, we got the Arnold Classic once again here in Columbus, Ohio. Of course, it's 2 degrees outside, snowing, flurrying. What more do you expect when you come to Columbus?
I tell you what, this is a heat wave compared to what we have back in Wisconsin. So coming to
that's right. I'm talking to the wrong guy, actually. Yeah. Now Peter's down in Fort Myers, Florida, so he doesn't know anything about that stuff. But we've got a great show. It's very good. We got the 212 we're going to focus on first, and of course the men's open. Both lineups stacked up, and definitely some of the best lineup that we've seen in a while. Peter, very evenly matched. This 212 lineup, I want to start there. Only 9 competitors, but 9 very good competitors. This is going to be real interesting to see who that first all-important call-out is.
Yeah, I mean, as always, the 212s bring a quality to it. You know, those guys really, the last few years, have shown everybody how to get in condition. And although there's only 9 guys, as you say, it's an in-depth field. And Jose's here, Jose Raymond, to defend the title. I got a feeling he's winning the title has given him more confidence, more not that he lacks self-belief, but I think he belongs on that stage. That's where he feels that it's his trophy again.
Well, Flex Lewis, the only notable name really not in the lineup, and of course Flex, the reigning 212 Olympia champ. So Jose should be feeling pretty good about his chances here.
Yeah, no, he's beaten all these guys before. A handful of the guys that we're seeing here are new from last year, but some of the the top competitors, Charles Dixon, Guy Cisternino, those are guys that Jose's beaten before. And as Peter said. He's as confident as ever coming into the show. I've talked to Jose quite a bit leading into it. He says he's at his all-time best, and with Jose at his all-time best, I don't know that anybody in the rest of this lineup can beat him, but it's going to be interesting to find out.
Well, Peter, Jose's been around for a minute or two. I mean, he's not one of the younger guys in the lineup. Actually, he's probably the most veteran competitor that we have in the lineup. I don't know his exact age, but I got to be thinking he's probably approaching 40 if he's not at this point. A lot of times, we get to that 40, 41 range. We can see some chinks in the armor. The legs start to not have as much sweep. We've seen this many, many years now. Jose doesn't seem to elicit any of those things.
No, I think he's actually 41.
Oh.
And but think of his career. There's a guy that competed in the amateurs for more than a decade, was natural.
Yeah.
Only took his pro card because the 202, 212 class came in. So he's not sort of battered his physique for 20 years like some guys. I mean, he's still got that sense of vitality. Like I say, if he comes in hard vascular, it's going to be hard to beat because he's still got a vacuum. We tend to think of those stocky guys as having something wrong with the gut. He hasn't,
Well, the vacuum could come in handy this year because clearly we all know Arnold's, and remember Arnold's comments from last year. You don't want to look like a bottle out there, David. That's the bottom line. You don't want to look like a bottle. You got to have the vacuum. They're going to be now. Here's the thing. Now, Arnold notwithstanding, is that something the judges are looking for this year?
Yeah, it seems like towards the latter part of last year, the judges started to pay more attention to who was controlling their stomach. Now, again, a shape is something that these guys can't necessarily control once they get on stage. But a lot of what was discussed that you and I see in athletes meeting is the judges saying, hey, look, guys, when you're going through your transitions, when you're hitting your side chest, you're setting it up, keep your stomach tight. And we saw that, we saw it in Poland last week. We saw a good Michael Calafianos really lose some ground because, he's turning to hit his side chest and he's breathing in and breathing out and just letting that stomach hang. And the judges are going to be looking for that. They're telling these guys, hey, the entire time you're on stage, keep stuff tight. Take some pride in your presentation, and I think they're definitely going to be looking for that rather here at the Arnold.
Well, speaking of presentation, Peter, this is always a great topic for you and I. The posing routine being scored once again here at the Arnold, kind of a little tester. Is this going to come into play now? In the men's open, that's definitely, we have some discussion on that. Do you see it coming into play with the 9 competitors that we have in here? Could the posing decide a winner, or should it decide a winner?
Well, that depends what the directive is to the judges in terms of a third of the marks being scored. I mean, has it been decided what they're actually looking for? Is it still physique or is it posing skill? You know my views on posing. You know, let's score it or let's not have it. You know, and we've got some great posers in here. He'll bring the house down. He was second here to Jose last year, third at the Olympia, I believe. So he's going to be a front runner. One guy I always look for in this lineup, 212s when he's in, is David Henry. He's almost like the Phil Heath of this division. If he just got it together, everything's there. And you've got somebody that's, a real dark horse.
I do. Corey Matthews. Not a name that's going to jump out a lot of people. He's been around a little bit. But I'm picking Corey Matthews as my dark horse pick. I saw a little sneak picture just last week, David, and let me tell you, this guy's got as much muscle as anybody on that stage, if not more. Conditioning has always been his key, that he hasn't quite achieved that combination. But I think he might have it this year. But I'm gonna go with Corey Matthews as a guy who might upset the apple cart a little bit, and we're going to go down that list because that top 5 is loaded right now.
Yeah, no, Corey's got a ton of muscle on his upper body. He's arguably maybe even the most in that lineup. But as you had stated, conditioning has been an issue for him. His legs don't quite match his upper body, but they're good enough to where his physique still flows pretty well. But again, it's just a matter of conditioning, and if he really brings it, he could do very well. But as Peter said, these guys bring, so not that, in the open you should be able to get away with it, but you really just can't in the 212. So if he's gonna place higher up in this lineup, he's gonna have to be in shape. Because I'll tell you what, Jose's gonna be in shape, Guy Cisternino's gonna be in shape. John Meadows is so lean, it's ridiculous.
He's an anatomy chart.
I mean, John he's gotten himself into such fantastic condition. I don't even know what descriptive terms to use for John. But Corey could do well, but he's gonna have to be in really good shape.
Well, speaking of John Meadows, again, we've got some great competitors here, Peter. You're in the judges' seat. Give me the first call out that you're going to make.
Jose, Hide, David Henry.
3.
I prefer 3.
It's interesting because judges have their own tendencies. Actually, our good friend Luke's just out of the camera vision here, but he's the head judge. They've all got different styles. Some pick 3. Some don't like to pick even numbers. They'll pick a 3 or a 5. I've seen Big Steve pick as many as 6 guys out there. I think this might be one of those cases where you actually might see a big lineup out there because we haven't even mentioned yet in there. You got John Meadows. You got Kung Wan Kang. He came on the scene last year, if you remember, at the Europa, and tremendous physique. I mean, a very clean-looking physique. Also not a young guy. I think he's 40 in his 40s. He looked tremendous. We haven't even mentioned Guy Cisternino yet. And you still got David Henry, and you got Hide and Charles Dixon, the tank out there. We saw Charles in there. I don't know. I think it might be one of those cases where instead of seeing 3, Peter, you might see 5 out of that.
Yeah, it's always hard to predict because obviously, condition is really important, ultra important these days. It's not just about the muscularity, the proportions, the flow. Somebody comes out ripped in the mandatories, they'll be called out. So, it makes it harder to predict a show because somebody can just be 5% off and it's all over.
Yeah, it's always very tight with the 212 guys, David. This is literally, it's going to be splitting hairs when you get that first call out. Give me your first call out there.
Jose, Guy, Charles, Hide, John Meadows.
All right, good call there. We know you're not judging. That's actually a very good call out, and I can see absolutely one of those scenarios taking place here. Like I say, these guys are so tight. I mean, literally, if you're off by a couple of percent, you could be out of the mix completely in here. So we'll keep our eye on the 212. Of course, that's lining up to be a great show. The men's open, getting to the big thing. Speaking of champs here, there's my man Nick Scott. Nick, come on in here real quick, man. Hey, where's the dance here, man? What do you got going on, Nick? Nick Scott, wheelchair champ.
I got the tie going, Bob, trying to catch your little outfit on.
I like that. Can I borrow that for the Olympia?
I got a pink one, too, in my room, actually.
Real men wear pink, Nick, but I like the shoes, man. You've been dancing. I know you do some ballroom dancing. Are you coming off of the dance floor? What's going on here?
Well, that's what it is. I'm actually I'm working with the Arnold. I'm actually the chairman for the wheelchair, the pro wheelchair for the event.
And wanted to give you a shout out on that, Nick, because I know your efforts obviously very well received by everybody, the whole bodybuilding community, but more importantly, of course, the wheelchair bodybuilders all over the world. And you've been working on that hard, I know, for many years now. Congratulations. first year the wheelchair champs are here in the house at the Arnold.
Yeah, and that's what it is. I've been working on this project for like 10 years because it's about trying to in sync. Because when I got involved with wheelchair bodybuilding back at the 2006 NPC Wheelchair Nationals, I was wondering why they didn't have a pro show, and I asked the guys and trying to figure this out, and going back and forth, and eventually figuring out when we talked to, and then coming across Mr. Jim Mannion, and then trying to figure things out, then it was slowly just putting the pieces of the puzzle together with your guidance, Mr. Jim Mannion and JM and so forth.
Nick, congratulations once again. I'm stoked to see the wheelchair champs up there once again. I know these guys are fired up. I've seen Facebook posts all over the place. Big Harold Kelly out there, and then the rest of the crew. These guys ain't messing around, man. You traded in the trunks for a tie these days. Nick, it looks like you're being more behind the scenes in the business end of bodybuilding now.
Yeah, that's what it was. And even back when you were announcing, I was the winner at it was a 2014 Houston Pro Show, but that was the only one that beat Harold at the time. But it was more about not even winning a show, but it was about just bringing the sport together globally. And, even when we talked, as well as Mr. Mannion and so forth, it was about the bigger vision, because then it was like, well, I'm the promoter and all this stuff and getting all the guys. It's like it just made more sense for me to transition for retiring as a champ and actually leading the sport by example and uniting the guys on a global scale, because we got Italy, Sweden, and even like Ludovic. He's based in LA, but he flew in from Thailand to do this. So there's guys all over the world that's actually competing. So they're trying to make this, and it's different than regular bodybuilding where there's tons. Right now, there's currently 23 IFBB pros in the world, and 2 actually passed away, and then there's me. So you minus 3, so you got 20. So there's 9 competing. So you got actually about 50% of the athletes competing this weekend at the Arnold.
Excellent. Well, Nick, congratulations, buddy. It's always good to see you, my friend, and I believe it's going to be a great show, and I know why should we believe, Nick, that this thing's just going to be a big barn buster out there?
Because I don't give up.
And
that's what it is. It's because it's trying to unite the guys, because we all work together as a brotherhood, and it's about growing this on a global scale, because it's not just about me, but it's their dreams. Their dream was to compete at the Arnold, and the next stage is the Olympia. But let's just survive the Arnold first to put on a show. And it's not about us, but it's about proving to the IFBB and the world that these guys are more than just athletes, but it's about the stories, because there's going to be a little bit of twist when you guys hear the intros, because a lot of people are wondering, it's like, why are they in the wheelchair? What's going to be their names, where they're from, and it's like why they're in the wheelchair, and give them an indicator of what type of level, because on the spinal cord, it really depends on where your injury level is. Mine's a T12L1, which is lower, so I have more balance than some of the other guys that are up like higher as a T6. So it's understanding the different the variables, and so it's going to kind of cut the ice on how this is all going to work and unfold.
all right, Nick. Well, as usual, my friend, always great to catch up with you, and as always, my friend, I love how you roll.
That's right. That's how I roll.
Good stuff. Nick gave me that line actually before, so appreciate that, man. All right, the wheelchair champs also taking the stage. Great news for these guys, and congratulations to them and all their efforts. All right, let's get right into it. The men's open now, the marquee event, of course, of the weekend, and another great list. 12 competitors, some of the same guys that you just saw in Poland last week, but a few other names added into the list this week.
Yeah, a couple of big names. Obviously, Kai Green stands out as the biggest name that's being added to this list. Missed him at the Olympia, former 2-time Arnold champion, so he's got to be everybody's front runner. I mean, obviously, there's a really deep lineup here of really good talent. But even with as good as Justin Compton is, I think right now, if Kai shows up at his best, or even 95%, I think Kai's going to be in the driver's seat.
Well, Peter, let's talk about Kai just for a second now. We haven't seen Kai Green on a competitive stage in about a year and a half. So it's the longest inactive period that we've seen out of Kai since he turned pro, literally. Could that impact him here?
Well, it could go either way. I mean, everybody's talking about he's over 40 now, but I don't think age is going to be a factor with Kai. I think he's still got that physique. He's shown no signs of, age in that physique. I would have thought he'd be really driven at this contest to shut a few miles, prove a few points, and to blank the past. And he's going to be the freakiest guy in the lineup. Sure. But I still have a feeling that Justin Compton keeps improving. Even though last year was a little bit of a, mistake for him, he came in too heavy, and he put it right in Australia. But I think he's got a better overall look to him. He's more of a flow to his body, and some of his shots are enormous. And I just see he's a relentless type of guy who just gets better and better.
Well, let me tell you why I think Justin Compton is a bigger threat than most people even believe. Justin Compton his physique reminds me the most of Phil Heath, especially when Phil first turned pro. And I've seen kind of the same progression now with Justin Compton. Much like when Phil turned pro, he was all arms, needed to improve his back. Same thing with Justin. Legs were always there. Needed to just, beef him up a little bit, but, he seems to have done that too. This could be interesting because obviously the only guy that beats Kai Green in recent history is Phil Heath. So can an improved Justin Compton prove enough problem and be more enough reminiscent of Phil Heath to give Kai a legitimate run here and win this title?
I think if Justin shows up conditioning-wise where he was at when he won that Orlando Europa in 2014, with the size he's carrying now, yes, I think he can. I think he can roll pose for pose with Kai. I mean, if you break it down, as Peter has always taught me to do pose for pose and judge it that way, I think Justin can beat Kai. But, Kai's I think, I think in his lat spread, he's probably going to have Justin. Back double bicep, I think Kai probably has Justin. I prefer Justin's front double bicep and his front lat spread to Kai's. I mean, so we can go back and forth pose for pose. I'm not crazy about Kai Green's most muscular, the way he hits the crab. Justin's hands clasp most muscular is one of the best in the game. So it's going to be interesting. But I think 100% Kai Green, as best as we've seen him versus 100% Justin. I think maybe I give a little bit of edge to Kai, but it's going to be close either way. And even Justin, for being off like he was last year, still took third place behind two former champions in Dexter and Branch. So I think it's going to be interesting, but I think it's going to be a great showdown between those two. Not to write anybody else off, but I think if I had to pick a top two, I think it's it's pretty clearly going to be Justin and Kai as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I don't think too many people would disagree with that, but it's clearly not a two-man race, Peter, as we know. The Big Mac, Cedric McMillan, fresh off a win just last week. I don't think he was at his best there, but I think he was certainly good enough to win. But he certainly, I think, has to improve here. If we see an improved Cedric McMillan here, is he into that mix with Kai and Justin?
Yeah, I think he is. I think he's got to be fuller than last week. He looks a bit depleted to me. We always say he should be cut and conditioned. When he's come down a little bit, like he did in Brazil last year, finished second to Ramy, he loses a bit of that awesomeness of the flow and the roundness. I mean, his legs in particular looked a bit not up to his usual standard. But if he comes on, plus he's, obviously people will be looking at him because he became the lightning rod last year with Arnold statements. He's got a fabulous physique. We all want to see Cedric do well, sure, but we've been waiting a long time.
All right. Potential nightmare for the judges. It comes down between Compton misses the mark for whatever reason. It comes down between Kai Green and Cedric McMillan. And now it comes down, they're so close physique-wise, it comes down to the posing round. I got hitched up on this one, Peter. Cedric McMillan, very traditional, very Arnold-esque in his posing, very graceful on the stage and all that good stuff. Kai Green, standing on his head, doing backflips, climbing the backdrop. God, no, you never know with Kai, but he'll be entertaining. A little bit of his dance in there and all that kind of stuff. Where do you go with this one?
Well, if you look at the classical type of posing, it's Cedric. He's really old school, hits those poses, holds them, which is a joy for the cameraman, because when people are jigging about and doing this stuff, there's no photo there. Kai, I mean, he's unleashed some great performances, but when he gets too involved and starts the standing on his head stuff, it's like, well, is that a new mandatory pose? Where are we going with this? It's very difficult to judge, because I really don't know what the criteria is for that posing round.
David, is there jigging about in bodybuilding? That's the question. Should you get scored down for jigging about? Are you getting jiggy with it?
I am not a fan of jigging about, I guess you could say. No,
Peter would say that.
My critique of Kai's routines, I've just never been that big of a fan of Kai's posing routines. But sometimes it's I guess some people don't like the old classical routines. I like the old classical style, slower posing routines. I know a lot of guys who watch that stuff and they're like, "Oh, those posing routines are going to put me to sleep." So as far as those types of routines that Kai does, I prefer Cedric. I like routines that I think are entertaining, but not the somersaults and the headstands and the stuff like that. That I don't particularly care for. So if I got to pick somebody for posing, I'm going to go with Cedric style. But it's like I said, it's some people hate the way Branch Warren poses, but I think it's funny. Comes out to some 80s music, hits some most musculars, shakes his quad. Some people hate it, but the posing around, it's going to be interesting for sure.
Well, speaking of Branch Warren, of course, the Texas Titan making his appearance back at the Arnold, a former Arnold Classic champ, also a former winner, oddly enough, of the posing round. That wasn't scored as such. It was, the best routine or whatever they scored it. Personally, I had Dennis Wolf winning that one that year, but forget about that. But Dave brings up an interesting point. Listen, Branch Warren goes out there. He does his own. He's got his own little shtick, and he's very, stone coldish out there doing his thing. Like all the accolades that we give him for those, blue collar worker. I don't think that really counts against him. I mean, I think he shows off his physique very well. Listen, it's his style. I mean, and thank God they all got different styles because, that'd be the most boring thing in the world if everybody was posing the same. So I like the mix of a Cedric and a Kai. Hide, actually, off topic, I think the best poser out of everybody. I think he combines classical and power into his routines. But Branch Warren into the mix. Now, we did not see the best Branch Warren in Poland. Branch, we just talked to a little bit earlier. Admittedly, he said, "Look, I had an off day. It's that simple. Quarterback goes out there, throws a few interceptions. He has an off day. It's no different for me. I'm going to be the best I've ever been here on this stage." Where does Branch Warren fit into this mix, Peter?
In terms of the posing or physique?
Physique.
Well, I mean, last year, Branch pulled a rabbit out of the hat. The thing that Branch does, we know he's got problems with the lat, the size of one leg and everything, but he covers them up very well. I mean, apart from when he's got to do a lat spread or something mandatory. From the side, he always looks shredded. He makes the best of what he's got, and he fights, and he takes being written off as motivation. So he'll come out there fighting. He's a crowd favorite. He's a gym warrior. Anybody who knows Branch loves the guy. Because he's got this caveman look about him, but he's far from that in real life. He's a great guy. So to answer your question, he'll be competitive, he'll do the best he possibly can, and he won't give an inch, and we'll just have to see where that takes him.
Well, could it take him out of the top 5 or 6, David? Now, again, we have a formidable lineup here. He gave up a little bit of ground last week, and now, which brings us to Josh Lenarowitz, one of the new guys on the scene, carries a ton of muscle. Looked great at the show, had great conditioning. Again, not 100%, but he could be 100% here. That could be trouble for a whole lot of other people.
Yeah, getting to your question about Branch, and Peter was spot on. Anybody who knows Branch loves the guy, and I'm in that boat too. But if it's my job to be, critical here and be realistic,
it is.
I think Branch is going to be fighting for a top 5 spot. I think it's fair to say Justin and Cedric probably your 1 and 2. Or rather, Justin and Kai. Cedric and Josh both beat Branch in Poland, and I would say if they've improved, which I know they have, that pushes Branch down to a 5th spot right there. You have Max Charles, Juan Morel, Evan Centopani, all very good bodybuilders, all strong in their back shots where Branch slips a little bit. I think very realistically with this lineup, we could see Branch Warren outside of the top 5, possibly outside of the top 6.
Well, this will be an interesting lineup for sure. And, of course, that first call-out is going to dictate a whole bunch. We'll see who comes in shape. Because the one thing you do know is a pissed-off Branch Warren is the worst kind of a Branch Warren for other competitors. Because you're right, Peter. He takes that, and he uses it for energy, and he really puts that nose to the grindstone. So we'll see what he comes back with. But he's going to have to improve over last week. That we know. Speaking of new guys, Cody Montgomery. New kid on the block. Great physique. Could be a future Mr. Olympia down the road. I don't doubt that. It really put together well. But is it the wisest thing to make your pro debut at the Arnold Classic?
Well, here's a guy that won the teenage nationals 3 times, which nobody else has done. So he's not an ordinary competitor. You know, you talk to him, even when he was 20 and 19, he never saw it as being he was too young. I mean, when we were 20, we didn't think we were youngsters. We still thought we were men of the world and knew everything. I did anyway, and I never changed. But he's got a complete type of physique. Will he make rapid gains from the Olympia? I don't think so, because he's sensible above other things. But if he's in shape, which I expect him to be, and others aren't, he could be manoeuvring his way up there, you know, into that top 5, 6. But the fact that he's taken it on just shows what his attitude is, and he's not arrogant. It's like, I might as well jump in the big pool and see what's happening, rather than, like a lot of guys, they take 2 years off or 18 months off when they turn pro. So, above all, he'll be an interesting person to watch on Saturday.
And it'll definitely be interesting to see him up against seasoned pros, because all we've seen him so far, you know, listen, he obliterated the teens, he obliterated the collegians, you know, he pretty much obliterated the nationals, you know, at that stage. But now he's up against, you know, it's a little bit different now. Now you're going to stand next to a guy who's been training longer than he's been alive. So it's going to be a little bit different, but it'll be very interesting to see when he comes out there if he matches those guys or if he's just simply not at that level yet. And obviously we'll see that as that unfolds. Speaking of veterans, Johnny Jackson, Tony Freeman, 2 guys that have been around the block more than a few times. Tony approaching 50, Johnny over 40 now. Both guys still look tremendous, but where are the veterans in this one, David?
You know, again, it comes down to looking at the rest of the lineup. And for as much as I respect Johnny and Tony as competitors, and for as much as I've looked up to them over the years, I think they're probably going to be towards the bottom of this pack. And that's, you know, when you look at this lineup, saying that they're towards the bottom of this lineup is saying like you won like the base Powerball, you know, like I only won the 40 million. I mean, right. So they're still fantastic competitors, but with as deep as this lineup is, I think again, I think you'll see Johnny and Tony probably near the bottom end of this lineup. And once again, all respect to those guys, but it's the Arnold.
Yeah, that it is. Juan Morel, Max Charles, 2 guys I kind of put in the same group because I think they're very competitive and comparative to each other when it comes to physiques. Where do you see them, Peter? Middle of the pack? I mean, could one of those guys bust out and give somebody a run into that top 6?
I think both of them are capable of that because both of them improve every year. They have done. You know, they're both relatively young in terms of contests. Sure. You know, Max, I mean, he looks phenomenal in the upper body. He's saying his legs have improved. He had a long-standing injury, which he's come over that. One always improves. You know, he always gets bigger and looks better. One guy I'll be interested to see is from Switzerland, Lucas Weiler. Now, that guy, from what we've seen, is rock hard, deeply grooved. He's not got a bad shape. If he comes in like that, dry and hard, he could push himself in there and take some bigger names out.
Well, another new name in that list, clearly the new guard coming around now. Now, we just went through an entire lineup with potentials and people, and we haven't even mentioned the name yet of Evan Senapani. Just to tell you how stacked this lineup is, and Evan's been a guy who's been there. I mean, you know, we've seen Evan, and he's like another Cedric to me. A guy that we're kind of waiting to break out. And, you know, listen, if you can just improve this and if you can just, you know, do that a little bit and just bring it. But, you know, now it's 5 years later. You know, it's not like, you know, he ain't the new guy anymore, you know, any more than Cedric is. These guys have been around now. They're veterans of the stage. Should we be expecting more out of Evan Senapani?
You know, I think the thing with Evan is he's just consistently pretty awesome. And I think people, you know, he's not a Phil Heath or a Kai Green. But he's very consistent in showing up and looking really good. You know, he's always going to be one of these guys who's winning the medium or smaller pro shows, but he likes to focus on the bigger ones where he places in the middle of the pack, which again is an incredible feat at this level. I think you know, I think Evan will do very well. I think he'll probably be in that 5th or 6th spot. I don't know that he's fighting you know, Kai or Justin, but I think a really sharp Evan Senapani, I think, can push that top 3, 4, 5 spot. And, you know, and Evans, you know, had off since the Arnold last year, so he's had a lot of time to make improvements. And but you're right. We're all kind of waiting to see this Evan that we saw when he won the 2009 New York Pro, where just everything just flowed really well. His legs were real big, and he just looked phenomenal. But I think for as awkward as that might sound, I think Evan's level of consistency sometimes almost pushes him out of this the conversation, because it's, oh well, yeah, Evan's going to show up and he's going to be great, and we already know that. So let's talk about who might win or who might be the dark horse or whoever. But I think look for Evan probably anywhere between that fourth and sixth spot, maybe.
You know, interesting, because we hear years thrown around all the time. You know, if you know, Jay could just get back to that 2001 shape, if Kai could just get back to 2012, when he did when Phil can get back. Does anybody ever get back to that? Because I got to be honest, Peter, like, I'm not so sure I've ever seen it before. Like, I almost want to think that people almost kind of peak at a certain year, but I'm not so sure. Listen, you're more of a than I am at this, but have we ever seen anybody recapture their best year?
Dexter would come close. Last year he came through. And then Ronnie's a strange case, because he was a pro for years and years and never got anywhere, and then suddenly jumped forward at the age of, 34? Yeah, something like that. I mean, as far as Evan's concerned, I think last year he came in, great things were expected. He got fifth. He was a bit too heavy, and he just said, that's it for the year. I'm not going to try and qualify for the Olympia. I think we might see the real Evan this time out. We've seen some recent pictures. He looks very dry. He's got a very clean look to him. He's not bloated at all. He's probably just a bit. Last year he was a bit too bulbous, if I could use that word.
Bulbous. Excellent.
Taurus bulbous, So I think he's driven. He's done his own thing through his own career. Evan never wavers in what he's not one of the guys that hangs around and bullshits. I wouldn't be surprised if he came out and caused a bit of a surprise. It seems funny talking about him as a dark horse.
Well, the things we've learned today, David, it's always a learning experience with Peter. It's great to have you back into the mix, Peter, back on the trail here as the season's just getting going. And one thing we have learned today, David, is that a combination of bulbous and jiggy ain't getting anything anywhere near the top 5.
I'm gonna leave it at that. That's where I'm gonna wrap it. Don't be bulbous and jiggy.
I'm just trying to bring a new class in, the bulbous and jiggy class.
Listen, you could probably submit that and get it done, because we got all kinds of new classes. That's a whole nother show, but that's going to wrap things up here. We will be back tomorrow, full day tomorrow, Friday. Well, of course, we'll be all over the expo with a whole bunch of superstars out there. We'll get some interviews for you. And, of course, we'll have our post-game report after the prejudging, and of course, and then we'll be bringing you all the events of the weekend. So stay tuned right here on MD Online. For Peter McGuff and David Bay, I'm Bob Chick, signing out.